What would a speech coach say? Hey there, this is Darren LaCroix. I thought it would be fascinating to critique, dissect the Denzel Washington, University of Pennsylvania commencement speech. It's a great speech. I was flipping through some motivational videos on YouTube. I love doing that. I came across this and I thought, how cool would it be to try and educate people on the do's and don'ts, but using this as an example. Now first, this is Denzel Washington. He's a movie star. He's a rock star. He's not a professional speaker. This isn't what he does for a living. So I get that. And it's a commencement speech, which is just one type of speech. There's many different kinds with many different intentions. But I'm watching it alongside of 500,000 other people, but I thought for the students that I have, how cool would it be to say, what would I have told him? Now, I don't know his preparation. I don't know if he had a coach. I don't know how long he took to prepare it, but this video is out there, so I thought it would be cool. So let's just dive in. And by the way, it's really easy to sit back and critique anything. In fact, I talk about this. Check out Teddy Roosevelt's speech, The Man in the Arena. Okay, it's really easy for anyone to critique it, but this is what I do for a living. So check this out, let's dive right in. 53 seconds in. What you might do, by the way, was call up two windows and watch it and see what I say and watch it and see what I say. But 53 seconds in, this is his opening. Okay, now I heard Robin Williams talk about celebrity comics when they're in a comedy club that they get an extra 60 seconds, 90 seconds of grace, but then you got to be good. In this situation, since it's a commencement speech, he's going to get even more grace. So it takes his time to really get started, but in a situation like this, it's okay. They're thrilled he's there. They've got a movie star to deliver their commencement speech. How cool is that? So he gets a little bit more grace. 1 minute in. Acknowledgement of the faculty, the staff, the students. Now, normally in any speech, I would say don't do this right up front. Have your opening, draw them in, set up the premise for what you're going to talk about, and then you do the acknowledgements. But in the case of a commencement speech, I think it's okay. It's almost considered this is the polite way to start, and in this situation, it's okay. So normally in other speeches, I would not advise it, but in this situation, he's doing what he needed to do. 1 minute and 35 seconds. He says, that's right, he played on the basketball team. The coach didn't give him enough playing time, but we'll talk about that later. Now, he's referring to his son played on the basketball team, and like, this is a dad talking, but how sincere is that? You know, we'll talk about that later. You didn't give him enough time on the court. Doesn't every dad think that about his son? So I really like this because it's personal, it connects, and it's also relatable to the parents. If their kid doesn't play baseball or softball, if they're not getting out there enough, you know, they want to talk to the coach. So I really like it. I thought it was real and sincere and personal. 2:49. He acknowledged that he was nervous. When this is sincere, there's nothing worse you can do to pretend you're confident, pretend you're fine and nothing's bothering you. Now, look, if you're a professional speaker, you should be confident. You shouldn't be nervous. But in a situation like this, again, it's not what he does for a living. I think it's very connecting to be authentic and acknowledge that. That gets it out of the way. The audience pulls open to you and wants to connect more to you because of that sincerity, because of that transparency. The audience has a sixth sense. They can tell. What I also love is he says that even if you put him as a scene into an actor, he can handle anything. And he uses specific scenes from specific movies, which is awesome, ties right into him, why he's there, why we love him. And then he said, from here, I can see every single one of you. That makes me uncomfortable. If I was coaching him, I would say, here I can see you, and you, and you. Because the word you is more specific than each and every one of you is what I call audience-focused language rather than one-on-one focused language. It's a lot more connecting when we use that you-focused language rather than each and every one of you. That's obviously talking to a crowd. It's an advanced technique, but very effective for helping the audience to feel like you're talking just to them. 5:12. Love, love, love this humor. He's talking about juicy Hollywood moments, and he mentions a few. And, that's what we want to hear. We want that, backstory of Denzel that nobody else knows about, just us. And then he went on to say, but you don't want to hear about that. And he kind of implies like you guys are above that, like you're really smart. He said, but that might go well for Drexel, but we're not over there. Now, Drexel is one of the competing colleges, so everyone has their rivalry. So when you kind of give a polite, playful dig to the competition, to the rivalry, there's nothing better for an audience, because now they know you did your homework. You know some of your backstory. You got some of that inside secrets, and now you're kind of, you're playing up to the audience in front of you and kind of, giving them a little dig, which I thought was great. And one of the things that I teach speakers to, when you're customizing, get to know where the people live, what they think, what are their frustrations, what do they talk about a lot. So nice job. 607, another relatable moment, like being on the insider's track. He said that he received an Academy Award, but he had never got a magic meatball after waiting in line at the food truck. So obviously that's some inside intel that he got. Now, whether he did or just knew about it or heard about it, just tying in, now the students who are there, they know exactly what you're talking about, and you got to feel connected about that. 757. Okay, so Denzel uses an analogy that, if you know me and my World Championship speech, is part of my World Championship speech. In fact, it was my key line right at the end of the speech, and it's how I ended it. And he started with this analogy of falling forward. Don't fall back. Now, it was a beautiful transition and beautiful setup, because he said, we shouldn't have that thing, have something to fall back on, have a plan B. And I love the inspiration behind it. He said, I don't want to fall back. I want to fall forward. So I like it. Now, obviously, I don't think he stole my line, because I didn't realize when I created Fall Forward, ouch, my championship speech, there was a book that was created by John Maxwell years prior. I wasn't even aware of it. It's an analogy, it's out there. He uses it, and he uses it pretty well. What I like later is he uses it as a transition line. So he's got a piece of evidence, fall forward. Another piece of evidence, fall forward. So it's a beautiful transition line reinforcing that point. 812. Okay, he's referencing Reggie Jackson. And I'm guessing a lot of people in this student, in the graduating students in the audience probably never heard of Reggie Jackson. Now the point is still clear, but when you've got just 22 minutes, you're impacting these kids' lives. I just think you're using a reference that needs to be more relevant to that audience. Now, had you given this speech 20 years ago, well, then Reggie Jackson, just like Tom Brady now, is a household name, whether you're a sports fan or not, but back then. Now, the analogy is good about, do we know the strikeouts versus the home runs? It's good, but I just think that there's so much more, and there's more of your story we're not hearing because you chose to put that in there. 826. Now he uses a Thomas Edison example. Now, I came from the motivational world, so I've heard this analogy since I started in 1992. It was overused back then. And he references 1,000 attempts to invent the light bulb. And he said, I didn't know that, which causes me to wonder, is this like something you discovered when you were researching to give this speech? And in which case he said, 1,001 was the light bulb. Well, that's not actually factual. And if you research it online, I did a few minutes of research. Edison talks about testing over 3,000 times. I've heard bigger numbers as well, but it wasn't literally 1,001. Yeah, we get the analogy, but again, what story are we missing because you used an example that it gets the example, it makes your point, but how about another one that's, again, more from his life and his story that we could even go deeper on. 854. Now he's finally starting. So he's coming to the place where he says, okay, 3 points. I like when a speaker or presenter gives us the structure. So now we've got that clear structure that we can follow along with what are the points. So point number 1, examples, stories, metaphors, analogies. Point 2, stories, examples, metaphors, analogy. Point 3, stories, so the evidence that comes for each point. So I like the clarity of setting up that structure, but we're at 8:54, 9 minutes into a 22-minute speech before we get to that. So structure-wise, I would hope that this was done earlier if I was coaching in this situation. 9:23, yes! Yes, yes. Now he's going into a Denzel story. This is what we want to hear from him. This is what they're going to remember more so than the Reggie Jackson, than the Thomas Edison, any of those other examples. This is what we came to hear. 9:50. Okay, this is when he comes to life. He's got comfort. He's telling one of his stories, and he's actually going through one of the stories when he's actually doing one of his auditions. And if you look at it closely, he just like, all of a sudden he starts like standing up a little straighter and having more fun. Now, he talks about being in the audition and he shrinks down. What I think would be even more powerful is if he did this, is if we heard his internal dialogue. If we didn't just say, which is narration, which is past tense, you know, I shrunk back. I want to hear the thoughts while the shrinking has happened. Oh my gosh, what are they going to do? I don't have a chance at this. Having that internal dialogue is so connecting to your audience, and it's so relatable to our own inside voices. That would be one thing that would make that even more powerful. 11:53, the dichotomy of him and the other actor, like this operatic, big Broadway type actor, and then where he was at this point in this audition. And that just sets up some great contrasting humor. That was awesome. 12:53, a great turn of fate that he talks about being in a Broadway show on the same stage that first audition that failed happened. How cool is that? Great for story, great for example, great to show transformation. I would love to see or hear a moment when he was maybe getting ready for that Broadway show one night and he thought back to, you know, beginner Denzel, or after a show when the audience was applauding and he thought back to what would he tell that beginning Denzel. So I think it's great. He did it well. I just think it could be much better, much more powerful if we just had those magic moments when he reflected, so he saw the difference and maybe what he would tell young Denzel when he first started. 13:32. All right, he quotes Les Brown and his wife, and he talks about a famous Les Brown story when the ideas come to you and they're gathered around your deathbed and they say, we came to you for life, only you could have brought us life. And obviously it's Les Brown, one of the greatest motivational speakers that ever lived. And I'm okay with this, but I would love to hear maybe the regrets Denzel had early on. So somehow taking that and connecting it a little to his life where he was regretting something, so then he did it. So he gives acknowledgement that it's Les Brown's story, which we should all do whenever we're doing something like that. But in this situation, I'd also, again, how does that connect to Denzel? What's the lesson Denzel learned from that? 15:27, a classic line. I want to make sure I get it right. You will never see a U-Haul behind a hearse. I actually looked it up because I was like, I wonder who said that. And I can't find anything, so I've got to assume it's original. I love that. You will never see a U-Haul behind a hearse, meaning you can't take it with you. And then at 15:42, he said the Egyptians tried and all they got was robbed. What a great tagline. In the comedy world, we call that a tagline. Just insightful, great visual, which helps make it unforgettable. 16:21. Okay, here's where I get a little bit confused as a speech coach. He says, okay, here's my last point about failure. So he set up the structure well, but he said, here's his last point about failure. So what I was wondering, is this the last point about that point, and now we're going into a new point, or is this his last point of the three? Remember he said he had three, so are we now on the last point, or are we on the last point of the first point? So again, I know I'm being picky here, a little confusing probably to most people, very confusing to somebody who studies this like me. So, just an insight. 17:18. Okay, this is the payoff. This is what we want from Denzel. He takes us into a low point in his life when he's at his mother's beauty shop. So now we know a little bit more about him. We feel a little closer to him. Hey, his mom owned a beauty shop. Wow, didn't know that. So it's almost like he's kind of opening up some of the backstory in his life, and it brings us in, and he tells us about this woman who he kept seeing. So he kept seeing this woman who's in a hairdryer, and she kept looking at him and kept looking at him. Now, here's one thing I would say as a speech coach. Give us one detail so we can picture her a little better. What color was the hairdryer? Did she have glasses on? Give us some visual so that we can see her along with Denzel. So we're kind of looking through Denzel's eyes. And so I loved it. That's just one detail I would add. So definitely draw that picture just a little. When we're presenters, we're telling stories, any storyteller, any communicator, we just want to give enough detail so the audience can paint the whole picture. We don't want to paint too much detail. Now we confuse the audience. 1939. Okay, now I am definitely unclear of the structure because I must have missed it, which was the second and third point. Now, he may have said it. He just might not have emphasized it or given us a pause after, so it was clear to us, the audience, what is this point? What is this Denzel wisdom we should take away with us that he's about to prove, he's about to talk about? 2012. Okay, so he brings up the movie Philadelphia, which he starred in, and he talks about renting it on Netflix. So it's an old movie, but he just brought it to us in this current day and age, because Netflix wasn't around when Philadelphia came out. And he said, please watch it and have your parents watch it, everybody watch it. Every time somebody watches it, I get 23 cents. I just think that's just fun, cool, true, and he's being honest. I just think it's playful. I thought it was awesome, and the audience loved it. They thought it was funny. So there's the critique. I hope it was helpful. I hope you got some points that will help you tell better stories, connect more with your audience, whatever kind of communication you do. If you get the chance to do a commencement speech, it's a huge honor. So I'm thrilled that Denzel showed up and delivered it. They loved him, make no mistake. I hope this critique has helped you. If you'd like to see more of them, please let me know or send me a YouTube video link, and maybe I'll critique one of the speeches that you like. So, Denzel, thanks for being you and giving back. This is Darren LaCroix from Stage Time University, where we help good presenters become unforgettable.
Check out StagetimeUniversity.com, where good presenters become unforgettable.